Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So, our group decided to go with topic number 1, which is language used in newspapers. We decided to do our research with two types of newspapers, which is Al Jazeera and BBC News. So, newspapers often report the same events using different language, tone, and emphasis. These choices influence how readers understand and react to the news. By examining language used, we can uncover subtle bias, emotional appeal, or neutrality in reporting. So, in our research, we decided to write about 5 type of question. Question number 1, which is what the language choices, including adjective, verbs, metaphors. Question number 2, we decided to write about the news. Does the article show a biased or neutral perspective towards the news that they're written? Question number 3, how do headlines and lead paragraph affect interpretation? Number 4, what are the similarities or differences in how the event is reported? The last question is, what is the purpose or target audience of each newspapers, and how does this affect language use?
Specific language choices. So the first one is the use of adjectives. In Al Jazeera's article, they use a more impactful descriptors. For example, they use the word starved children. BBC, however, they use a more emotional descriptors, like her body was emaciated. The second one, use of verbs. Al Jazeera, they emphasizes violence. For example, they use the verb deported, whereas BBC, they use a more emotional and neutral verb. For example, cried and suffering. The third one is use of metaphors or use of figure of speech. Al Jazeera's article, they use a more political undertone. For example, they use the phrase called out her government for sending weapons instead of aid to the Palestinians. And BBC, they use a more figurative expressions. For example, they use the phrase cry of a voice that won't give up. So in conclusion, even though both articles is the same event, but both use the different language choices. For example, the use of adjectives, verbs, and metaphors are different in both articles, and because of the differences, it can influence the public to have their own opinion, and also make the public more critical and aware of the news that is happening in the article.
Hello, Assalamualaikum, and my name is Umi Mastura binti Harun. My matrix number is 1241163. So I'm here to answer the question number 2, which is, does the language that the newspaper use reflect their ways on such a certain event? Does the language that they use shows bias or neutral? So the media itself plays a crucial role in shaping public expectation and perspective. So there's such big event and geopolitical conflict such as Gaza conflict itself, including the Palestinian and Israeli. So I'm here to write a research about 2 newspapers that I choose, which is Al Jazeera News and BBC News. So clearly over here, Al Jazeera itself, when they are writing their report, they normally and frequently use emotional and powerful language, such as the word pounded, which means the pounded itself emphasizing Palestinian suffering, frames Israeli as the attacker. So here, what I can conclude, Al Jazeera show bias toward Palestinian by the language that they use while writing their report. Meanwhile, on the other hand, BBC News uses neutral and formal language such as conflict. So BBC News tend to choose a word that doesn't show any side that is wrong or right. So they tend to stay neutral and formal while writing their report, because their attempts is to balance both sides by quoting Israeli and Palestinian sources. So BBC News tend to stand neutral and showing the suffering and the fact that both sides are facing.
Hi, my name is Nur Humaira binti Razaimi. My metric number is 1241169. Today, I'll be comparing two news articles, one from Al Jazeera titled Israel Deports Gaza Freedom Flotilla Activists to Germany, and the other from BBC, A Frail Cry and Relief, Malnourished baby Siwa Evacuate from Gaza. The Al Jazeera article used a direct and political charge headline. It immediately tells readers that Israel has removed a political activist and includes a powerful emotional quote, which is Germany choose to starve their children. This language creates a strong sense of anger and sets a serious tone. Words like sending weapon instead of aid suggest a negative view of both Israel and Germany. The article encourages readers to feel that something wrong is happening, with innocent people suffering because of it. It calls for action and political reflection, focusing on the political responsibility of those involved. On the other hand, the BBC article takes a much softer approach, which is the headline itself used the words frail cry and relief, which evoke a tone that's both sad and hopeful. The article focuses on the human aspect, describing the journey of a baby being evacuated from Gaza. It used phrases like a child born in this war and managed to escape, which create feelings of sympathy and care. The tone is calm, compassionate, and avoids any political critique. Instead, it invites readers to empathize with the victims, focusing on their personal struggle rather than the larger political context. So, for the conclusion is, Al Jazeera used emotional charged language to encourage political accountability and anger, while the BBC focused on empathy and compassion for the victims. Both articles shape the reader's perception, but in very different ways. One through anger and political reflection, and the other through human-centered empathy.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is binti Ramli. My matrix 1241180. I will be presenting a comparative analysis of two news articles that cover the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza, but from very different angles. The two articles we choose are first from BBC. The title was Gaza Baby with Malnutrition Evacuated for Medical Care, and the second one from Al Jazeera, Israel Deports Gaza Freedom Flotilla Activists to Germany. Although both focus on the situation in Gaza, their approaches, tone, and purposes are quite different. Let's begin with what they have in common. Both articles use human-centered storytelling. The BBC focuses on Siwa, a malnourished baby rescued from Gaza, and her emotional mother Najwa. Meanwhile, Al Jazeera highlights Yasmin Akar, a German activist who was deported after trying to deliver aid to Gaza. In both stories, individual experiences are used to represent the larger crisis. This helps readers connect emotionally with the issue. Secondly, both reports underline the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. The BBC shows it through the lens of starvation and lack of medical care, while Al Jazeera shows it through the lens of international efforts to break the blockade and deliver aid. So while the methods differ, the core message is the same. Gaza is suffering. We will go deeper into the differences. The BBC article is neutral and compassionate, avoiding political language. It focuses on survival and aid, not blame. On the other hand, Al Jazeera is more confrontational and political. It includes quotes like Germany chose to starve children and directly criticize Israel's actions. This difference in tone reflects how each outlet wants to shape the reader's perception. The BBC centers the voice of a Palestinian martyr focusing on local victimhood. Al Jazeera centers of an international activist focusing on global resistance and solidarity. So, the BBC highlights the effects of the crisis, while Al Jazeera focuses more on the political causes and responses. These differences don't just happen by accident. They reflect each outlet's editorial policy and audience. The BBC aims for neutrality and serves the global mainstream audience, including Western policymakers, while Al Jazeera, especially on Middle East issues, often speaks from a global South perspective, with a more activist tone and a pro-Palestinian audience. And last but not least, their purposes also differs. The BBC more to inform and generate empathy, while Al Jazeera more to challenge the powers, structures, and support actions. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Hasna Sofia binti Imam Azhar. My metric number is 1241183. My section is about the purpose or intended audience of each newspaper. There is two newspaper right here, Al Jazeera and BBC News. For Al Jazeera, their target audiences are most primarily the Middle Eastern or even the global South viewers or readers. The purpose of Al Jazeera is often to reflect the regional perspective, and they aims to highlight the humanitarian injustice. The effect that it has towards its reader is most likely to be a strong emotional connection, and Al Jazeera will most likely can provoke the readers or can even persuade the readers. For BBC News, it's a little bit different since BBC News target audiences are the international people or even the UK-based citizens that have varied perspective. Their purpose is most likely to emphasize impartiality and focus more on the credibility through neutral presentation. And the effect that it has towards its reader is that it will be less likely to provoke strong emotion from the readers, and BBC News can even encourage detached understanding between the readers and the article.
For the conclusion, Al Jazeera and BBC cover the same Gaza conflict, but differ in tone, language, and focus. Al Jazeera used emotional, political charged language to advocate for Palestinians, while BBC maintains a neutral, formal tone focusing on human stories. These differences reflect their editorial goals, which is Al Jazeera aims to raise awareness, while BBC seeks balance, reporting for a global audience. Understanding these differences helps us recognize how language shapes our perception of global issues.